MLB Talk, New York's #1 baseball podcast. Now here's your hosts, Chris Pizzaya and Rob Maraska.
And welcome back to a new episode of NYMLB Talk with Rob and Chris. Rob, what's going on, man?
Hey, Chris, how is everything going for you?
I'm doing all right. It's doing better after this weekend. The series went as well as we could have asked, taking 2 out of 3 against the Mets. What were your thoughts about the 3 games?
Listen, my thoughts was it was all about Soto, and it was out of control. All right, something is going on with this guy, and he's just got to get it out of his head, because we knew what the reaction was going to be. We knew he was going to get booed. I mean, he really got booed, and the bleacher creatures who loved him last year went nuts on him. But he had to be prepared. And in the first game, he tipped his cap. He was smiling and laughing. But by the third game, it looked like it was really bothering, because he was supposed to be mic'd up by ESPN, and he backed out of it, and Nimmo had to do the mic up. So I don't know, Chris. What do you think? What's going on with Soto?
I don't know. Something's going on in his brain. Obviously, it's not physical. It's all mental with this guy. And you know what? At the end of the day, he's got to get over it. He's got to get over, I don't care who, forced him to sign with the Mets or whatever. You know what? Push all that aside for a second. Like that, and push away the money for a second, because that's obvious too, right? Went for a little bit more money. But maybe at the end of the day, this is where he wanted to go, right? Maybe this is really where he wanted to go. Maybe the 2 series, against the Mets last year, maybe he got a good vibe from the team, talking to some of the players, Lindor and Alonso. Maybe he was getting a good vibe from them. And maybe he said, hey, you know what? If they go after me, I think I'll sign with these guys. They got a pretty good clubhouse. They got a good group of players there. I like this team. Maybe I'll sign with them. And you know what? When the offer came in and all the extra stuff and all that, it was probably hard to say no. And maybe with his mom saying, hey, if we're getting $100,000 of clothes every year for me, maybe that kind of pushed it past the goal line. But either way, he's the one that put his hand on the pen and signed his name on the contract. So it's on him. So he's got to get over this and just start playing ball. Forget about it.
Yeah, listen, I agree with you, Chris. But what is the problem? It's not like, listen, up until last night, the Mets were in first place, right? Now Philly overtook them by a half game because the Mets are in a slump. No one's hitting. But what's the problem? It's not like the Mets were, in last place or at the bottom of the division. They were in first place every day this year up until last night. So I don't know what the problem is, why it's in his head. Maybe Citi Field is in his head, but he's played there how many times? I mean, when he was on Washington. Yankee Stadium is built better for him, of course. But you know what? This is the way it is. Man up, play. And it can't, I don't know. He's saying everything's all right. He's hustling. But I don't know. Something, it doesn't look like it. Like you said, it's something in his head. And, they have to figure it out. He has to figure it out, and the Mets have to figure it out.
Listen, he didn't hustle every single play for the Yankees last year. He didn't hustle every single play for the Padres and for the Nationals. That's just not we see it all the time. He's not the only superstar player that doesn't hustle every single play. All right. So it's not a shock to see him not hustling or not running something out, or when he hit the shot last night in Boston, he thought it was a home run. And, he kind of just stood there. All right. You know what? Maybe he was hoping it was a home run. So this way, hey, I'm breaking out of it or whatever. So it is what it is. Listen, from now until the last day he plays for you guys in 15 years, he's not going to hustle out every single play. I'm being honest. That's just the way he is. And you're not paying him to hustle. You're paying him to friggin' hit 40 homers, 100 RBIs, 300 average, and, over 400 on base. That's what you're paying this guy for. And that's what he's got to do. Forget about who cares. If he was hitting good, right, would you care? Or would we even hear about this hustling crap?
And this is what, listen, Chris, what I told you before. When he starts hitting, this is all going to go away. Yeah. All right. But he's not being paid to go 1 for 10 against the Yankees with 4 walks. It's something was in his head. He's got to figure it out. And listen, the Mets right now are slumping. Alonso has cooled off. Lindor has cooled off. The team has just cooled off. And that, that's just the way it is. They're going through the season is a long season. And there's peaks and valleys, like they say. And right now the Mets going down. But, it could change anytime. And when all those guys get hot together,
they'll be fine.
Forget about it. So, we just fine. We have to just see what, we have to see what he's going to do.
I'd be concerned if this is at the All-Star break and we're still talking about Soto batting 230. You know what I mean? But he's going to be fine. He's just got to get over it. Mentally, he just has to be like, okay, I signed the contract. I wanted to be here. This is it. It was great last year in the Bronx with, the bleacher creatures, preaching to him every single game out there. He re-signed with us, and all that stuff. And he loved it. I'm sure he loved playing in Yankee Stadium. I'm sure that was great. But you know what? Citi Field could have some kind of an atmosphere like that. I don't want to say it's going to be the same thing because it's hard to match what Yankee Stadium does. But it's still going to be, listen, you guys got to, get on him now. Now you got to start cheering and you'll be fine, So
listen, Chris, Citi Field.
He'll be
last
fine.
year in the postseason, Citi Field was crazy. So it gets just as loud. It gets loud there. Yeah. I've been there when it's loud. It's not like Shea Stadium because it's 2 different stadiums. Shea Stadium used to rock and there was a lot more people. But everything's going to be fine when he starts hitting, when he figures it out.
Anyway, before we bring on our special guest, just shout out to TBK for joining us as usual. What's up, TBK? Thanks for coming in and hanging out with us. We have a special guest today. We got Mr. Chaunce Hayden, who we've already had before. We've had him on once before. Now we got him on again. He's got a new book coming out. He's going to talk to us about that and everything else. But anyway, welcome back, Chauncey.
Good to see you, Chauncey.
Hey, guys. How's it going? Thanks for having me on your show again.
Good, man. What's your thoughts on this whole Juan Soto thing? You're a Mets fan. Let me know what you think.
Listen, I've been a Met fan since the 1960s, since the mid-60s.
There you go.
I stood outside Shea Stadium the first year it was built when he had the World's Fair in 1964. I've been a Mets fan forever. When Casey Stengel was the manager.
Yes.
Fucking run, Soto, run.
Exactly. It's not that hard.
Forrest, run, Soto, run.
It's not that hard.
God. Rob, you're very calm. Like, you're very zen. I'm not zen. I'm not zen like you.
It's only May. That's why I think. I think in June he's going to start flipping out.
I busted my remote. Run! You fucker, run! And Alonso, throw the ball.
Oh, yeah.
Throw the ball. What the hell's wrong with you? These guys are professional baseball players. They're the best of the best in the major leagues. Throw the ball from first base to the pitcher. You can do it.
Yeah,
we did in the game before that, right?
They give me ulcers, and we go through this every year. Now comes the slump, right?
Right.
Now, right into July, into the All-Star break, we fall apart. And they're going to fire the manager, and we got to trade Soto, and we got to get rid of Alonso. And here it comes, right up to the 4th of July. And then they're going to be about 15 games back. And then they're going to start, and it starts again. And you start glancing at your TV, you start looking at the standings every night on Google. And by September, there's a chance. I can't take it anymore. I can't take it.
But you should be used to this.
Fan. What?
You should be used to this. This is like the normal routine. We're gonna stink for a while. We're gonna bounce back. We'll be in the playoffs.
No, it's like being a Jet fan. It's the same thing. Met fans and Jet fans.
No.
Like Giants and Yankees, and it's Mets and Jets. Is that how it works?
Yeah, Chris knows about the Jets. He's a Yankee Jet fan.
That's unusual. That's an unusual mixture. Usually the Mets and the Jets. I can't. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. It's very, very hard team to root for. Very hard. And the relief pitching. God damn it!
Yeah.
How many games? How many games? Year after year after year. Damn it.
Hey, Diaz was all right on Saturday. You know, but Diaz, he's another one. You're right. All our relievers, year by year by year.
I never feel good. I never feel good. Never. I don't care who's out there. From the seventh inning on, I never feel. I don't care what the score is. I never feel like we won the game. I never feel like it's over. Never.
Chauncey, it's because they could never get anybody out 1, 2, 3 in the ninth inning. We got to go with a walk.
Bases loaded, full count. It's always like that. Always like that. And I can't take it anymore. I can't. I'm 66 years old. I can't take it anymore. My heart,
I hear you.
They're killing me. The Mets are killing me. And I'm so pissed off about this past weekend, and I'm pissed off about Boston, and I'm pissed off about it's just the last 3 weeks, the last 3 series. God damn it. God damn it.
Yeah, they sucked us in, right?
They sucked us in again. They do it every year. They sucked us in again. Year after year after year.
And the Phillies are
season left. Don't worry.
Yeah, the Phillies are in first, and the Braves, of course, we knew the Braves were going to be all right. They're creeping up also. So it's going to be a 3-team race in the East. So we'll have to see what happens. But Chauncey, you're here to promote your new book, 50 of the funniest people of all time, 3 decades of legendary interviews, which you have interviewed some amazing comedians. The cover has Sam Kinison, Andrew Dice Clay, George Burns, and Richard Pryor. It just looks amazing. But for new people who are out there and who are going to listen on the tape, tell us real quick how you got into interviewing celebrities.
Absolutely. So I made a living interviewing celebrities since the late 1980s. I did it every week. I worked for a magazine called Stepping Out, and it was a weekly. It was a local weekly in New Jersey. And the way it started was, I'll give you the condensed version, but it was so crazy. I was healing from a head injury, and I couldn't work. I was recovering. It was a very slow recovery. And the neurosurgeon recommended that I start painting. So I started drawing and painting, trying to get my brain back together, basically. And I became obsessed with Sinead O'Connor, totally obsessed with her. And that bald head. And I started drawing her. And I started drawing her all over my house. I drew her all over my room, all over my living room, canvas, on the walls. My wall was Sinead O'Connor's face. And I drew her face every single day for about 6 months. And then she had a tour scheduled coming through. I don't know if you remember the old Garden State Theater. It's not PNC now. What was it?
Arts Center.
Garden State Arts Center in those days. And I'm like, oh my God, Sinead O'Connor. She's coming here to New Jersey. I got to see her. I got to do better than see her. I got to meet her. I got to actually touch her. So I magazine Stepping Out had just come out a week earlier, and it was like 4 pages. It was like the weather on the cover. It was like the weather and maybe 2 bars inside, and then horoscopes. That was the whole magazine. And I said, oh, I got an idea. And remember, this is before Facebook, before internet, before anything. This is when we just had fax machines, and that was it. So I took scissors and I cut out the logo for Stepping Out, and I scotch taped it to a piece of typing paper, and I typed on a typewriter. I'm a journalist, and I'm the editor of Stepping Out magazine, and we're a national magazine, and we want to do a feature cover story on Sinead O'Connor, and I faxed it to our publicist, and never thinking I'm going to get a response. But the next day, the publicist calls me and says, "We got your request. It's been approved. You're going to spend a half hour with Sinead prior to the show at the Garden State Arts Center." And I couldn't believe it. I was in shock because I'm just a stalker. That's all I am. I have I've never interviewed anyone. I'm not a journalist. I didn't know how to do that. So now all I'm thinking about is, do I kill her? I go, technically, I'm supposed to kill her. That's what you do. Like, I go there, I take a knife out, and I cut her throat, and that's how it ends. And I'm like, wait a minute, what if I actually interview her? What if I actually do it? And thank God it was like a cross in the road, kill her or interview her. And I decided to actually try and interview her. And I went to Radio Shack, and I got a cassette recorder, and I wrote some questions. And that was the night that she wouldn't come out and sing if they played the Star Spangled Banner.
Yeah.
It was right when the Gulf War had started, and it made global news. And Frank Sinatra said he was going to kick her in the ass if he sees her.
Yes.
And I had the only interview. So I have this huge scoop, and I don't even realize that I have this thing. And, asked her all these great questions. So I called it the Aquarian. Remember the Aquarian, the East Coast rocker?
Yes.
Were you guys aware of that? It was a music newspaper.
Yeah, I was, because I'm from Jersey. So
yeah, okay. So So I called them, and they tell me to go fuck myself. That they had no interest, and I don't think they even believed I had the interview. So I said, well, why don't I just call Stepping Out? I'll just call them, and I'll say, do you want this interview? And they said, oh my God, we would love an interview with Sinead O'Connor. They go, but we can't pay you anything. We're just, a couple of pages. They said, but we'll put your name on the cover, and we'll put Sinead on the cover. So I said yes. And immediately the magazine got attention all over the world. And all the bars and clubs and all these advertisers started calling the magazine to say, hey, we read about your magazine in the news. How do we get in? How do we advertise? So the owners called me up and said, can you do this every week? This is amazing. And I said, it's of course, it's so easy. You just ask, and they say yes, and you go and interview somebody. And from that day on, every week for the next 30 years, I interviewed a celebrity.
Yeah, that's how it started. That's one of the best stories, I have to tell you. And then, it got you on the Stern Show too, which really made you explode.
Well, the Stern Show started because I was supposed to interview Sam Kinison up, right. I think the Comedy Loft in Rockland County. And Sam was going through a rough time, and he lasted about 10 minutes on stage and stumbled off, totally coked out of his mind. And I was supposed to interview him after the show. So I'm waiting in that outdoors hotel room. I think it was a Holiday Inn up there. And the brother kept coming out saying, oh, we're trying to get Sam to do it. He's messed up. We're trying to get him to do it. And this went on for most of the night. And finally, they said he's not going to do it, dude. It's not going to happen. But we had already printed the cover with Sam on it saying an interview. Yeah. So I was pissed off. So I wrote a story about the show and about what happened and how he couldn't do it because he was so coked up. And about 6 months later, Sam is performing at Rascals in West Orange.
Yeah.
And I was invited to the show. So I go to see him. And the owner of Rascals says, do you want to go backstage and hang out after the show? And I said, yeah, I'll go backstage. So I'm back there. And Bill Kennison, his brother, comes up to me and says, hey, is your name Chaunce Hayden? And I said, yeah. He pulls out the article from 6 months ago where I bashed Sam. And he goes, you wrote this fucking piece of shit story? And I said, yeah. And he goes, Sam, that's him. That's Chauncey. And Sam dives on me and starts pounding on me. His bodyguard's pounding on me. They smash my camera, my recorder, and it ends up in all the newspapers the next day. So Howard reads about it, and Sam was supposed to come on the show that morning. And so Howard's like, who's this guy Chauncey? And what's Stepping Out? And he riffs on it for about an hour, making fun of me, making fun of my name, making fun of the magazine. And it just, from that day on, I became a regular on the Howard Stern Show. It just, it just all clicked. It all worked. And that's how that started.
Yeah, it's so funny because I heard that while it was happening. I remember those shows and they were so funny at the time. But yeah. All right, one other quick one that you told us already. Tell us your Don Mattingly story about when you interviewed him.
Oh, well, I got to interview so many kinds of people, from sports legends to comedians, politicians, reality stars. And I think my favorite were baseball players because I love baseball so much. And to be able to go on the field at Yankee Stadium during batting practice, it was like a dream come true. and then to have access to the dugout. You could just sit there and hang out in the dugout, while the players are going back and forth and talking and stretching. I was like a little kid. So I was there to interview Don Mattingly. So they said after the game, you can go into the locker room and he'll give you about a half hour. You can sit by his locker and you can talk to him. So I watched the game up in the press box, and afterwards went down into the tunnel, went into the locker room, and it's so surreal in there. You just can't believe that these are the people you watch on TV and you follow every weekend, and they're all like taking showers and they have towels around them, and they're so out of the element that you're used to seeing them in. You just can't believe it. And so there's Don Mattingly, and he's coming out of the shower. And they go, okay, there's his locker. Just sit down on a stool. And he's going to sit down next to you. And, you have him for a half hour. Great. So I'm sitting there by his locker. He comes over with his towel, and he drops the towel on the floor. He's completely naked with a big hairy bush. He's got, he's not shaved. It's like hair. You can barely see his penis because there's so much hair covering it. I'm thinking, this guy needs to shave. He needs to trim. Like, that's so much hair. And he sits there, and his legs are wide open. And I got my paper of questions on my recorder, and I'm trying my hardest not to look at his dick because it's right there. It's right there. I'm looking at it. I see the curve of it. I see the color of it, the veins. And he's not even thinking. He's scratching his arm under his arms, and he's messing his hair up, and he's rubbing his head with a towel.
Keep eye contact.
I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I say? It's so hard. It's just, no pun intended. I'm just like, this is impossible. And I believe he did it to bust my balls, and I think the other players were in on it. They had to be, because it wasn't normal. It wasn't normal. He had his legs wide open, and he was just sitting there saying, "Ask me any question you want." With his like this, like Sharon Stone,
Oh my God!
So yeah, I got to know Don Mattingly very, very intimately.
Yeah. Maybe too intimately.
I think some states were married.
That's a great story. Now with the book, Chauncey, if you had to pick one or two favorite interviews in that book, who would they be and why?
Well, there's 50. I've interviewed hundreds of comedians, but for this book, the hardest thing was picking 50 for the book because they're all so great. So I came up with my favorite 50, and the question you're asking me is a very hard one to answer, because I'm sure when people see the names from Anodized Clay, Joan Rivers, Pat Cooper, Richard Belzer, Richard Pryor, right? Don Rickles, George Burns, Gilbert Gottfried, I can go on and on. It would take forever to name all the names. But the ones, for me personally, I would say the top three was George Burns. It was just fascinating to talk to George Burns. A lot of people probably won't even know who that is today. But if you saw the movie Oh God with John Denver or the Sunshine Boys, George Burns in the 1990s was a pop culture icon. He was in his 90s and late 90s, and he was still sharp as a tack. He was still doing roast. He was still on TV, and he was still making movies. And to have a chance to talk to him, he was just so funny and just talking about a century of show business, a century. I could have talked to him for hours, and he was so sharp. So I love talking to him. Richard Pryor is another good one. He was dying. When I spoke to Richard Pryor, he was on he had the advanced stages of multiple sclerosis and Parkinson's. He was very, very ill, and he was a different man than the Richard Pryor I guess we got to know in the 70s and 80s. And he was very humbled, and he knew he didn't have long to live, and he was so gracious to me. And it was hard for him to speak. It was hard for him to form words. And he struggled through the interview, and just such a gracious man. And afterwards, the next day, he sent me a note, and it was scribbled, and he could barely write, just saying how grateful he was that I took the time to talk to him, this legend. and he just wanted to say thank you for doing the interview. So that meant a lot to me. I would say the other is it's hard to say, but Bill Maher was fascinating because he was so controversial. This was after 9/11, and my interview with Bill Maher, he gets into a whole. This made a lot of news too. This particular interview, he described the pilots, the terrorist pilots of 9/11, as heroes, and you can imagine. Even now, it's hard to say that, but back then in 2001. He described the pilots of 9/11 as heroes. And I said, how can you say that? Are you sure? I never filter people when I interview them, but even with that, I had to say something and said, Bill, you really want me to write that? He said, yes. And I'll tell you why. He said, these guys believe in a cause. It's radical and it's awful for us to understand. It's sickening. But for them, it's what they believe. And they were willing to train to be pilots and not land the plane, knowing they're going to go head first into a building and kill themselves and everybody on the plane. And he said to do that, he felt, and I think he still feels that way, took courage. So he called them very brave. And that got him canceled, actually, from his show on ABC because it was so outrageous.
It was outrageous.
So that one stands out to me. And oh my God, there's some George Carlin, great. Oh my God, he's such a legend, and he was my hero. And getting to talk to him, and Dennis Miller wanted to punch me in the face. I said he was that a lot of people describe him as a narcissist and having a strong ego. And he said, I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to tell me exactly who said that and when, or I'm going to get up and punch you in the face.
Wow.
So, all these interviews, Don Rickles, oh my God, how could I not, mention Don Rickles? Absolutely amazing. The most racist comic of all time, and got away with it. If you look back on YouTube of his act, it's hard to believe that he could perform and say the things he did.
But they knew what Don Rickles was about. That guy did not have a mean bone in his body. I mean,
no, but it was a different era. It was a a time. And
world.
You couldn't be Don Rickles today. You couldn't be back today.
No, I mean, but he was great. He was funny. I mean, I'm envious of you that you got to interview Don Rickles. I love Don Rickles. Get into it a little. How was he with you? Yeah.
He was great. He was. I'll tell you, one of the things he told me it's such a funny story. I'll share it with you guys. I don't want to give too much away. I want you to buy the book, but I'll tell you this story from the interview, and it really was hysterical. So I asked him about Frank Sinatra. I said, what was it like hanging out with Frank Sinatra? Like, you guys were close. Like, you hung out with him. You're friends with Frank Sinatra. And he said, Chauncey, I'm going to tell you a story about Frank Sinatra. He goes, so one day, he goes, I'm having dinner in New York City, and Frank comes in with his posse. Comes in with a whole bunch of people, and I'm with my wife, and we're having dinner, and I want to impress her. I wanted to think I'm a big shot. So Frank sits at a table across the restaurant, and I asked the waiter. I say to the waiter, buy Frank and all the people at his table, bottle of champagne, and tell them it's on me, and I just want to do something nice for Frank. So the waiter goes and he says to Frank Sinatra, this is on Don Rickles. He's sitting over there, and he said, say hello. So Frank, being gracious, Frank stands up, walks over to Don Rickles, and he says, well, Don, that was very nice of you to send a bottle of champagne over to our table. And he said, I looked at him and said, are you joking? I'm having dinner with my wife. You get away from me. He goes, I can't have 5 minutes peace. Yeah, you coming over and bothering me during dinner.
I love that story.
It was so Don Rickles, and he said, Frank, with his mouth hanging open. He goes, get out of here. Somebody get this guy away from me. We're trying to have dinner here.
That's so funny. And Chauncey, Don Rickles was best friends with Bob Newhart too. Two opposites, and they were best friends. That with their wives and families, they traveled the world together, which was pretty amazing.
Yeah, there were so many great comics from that era, right? And that's what I love about this book, that it goes back that far. It goes back to Don Rickles, Richard Pryor, or these amazing Robert Klein's in the book.
Wow, that's amazing.
Joan Rivers, and then we have people like Robert Schimmel. You remember Robert Schimmel?
Yeah, of course. He passed away young.
He passed away. He was hysterical and died of leukemia. So he's in the book, and he's amazing.
Yeah, Chauncey, he married his daughter's best friend.
Yes. And we talk about it in the interview. We talk a lot about it. I'll tell you, these are the people who are dead from the book. That it breaks my heart, but it was amazing that I got to interview them before they died. So David Brenn is in the book.
Great.
We mentioned Don Rickles, George Burns. We mentioned George Carlin. We mentioned Gilbert Gottfried is in the book. Gilbert Gottfried, who I still can't believe passed away.
I can't either.
Yeah, because he wasn't even old, right? He was
no. He wasn't old.
And no one knew he was sick. No one knew he was sick. That's the weird thing. How was it, before you go on, how was it interviewing Gilbert? How was he?
Very strange, because everybody knows how Gilbert sounds, right? That high-pitched, crazy voice that we all know when we think of Gilbert. That's not who he is. So when I sat there with Gilbert Gottfried, he looks like Gilbert Gottfried. He sits down across from you, and then he goes, "This is him." So, Chauncey, thank you very much for talking to me today. I just want to say it's a pleasure, and feel free to ask me any question you want, and I'll try to answer it to the best of my ability.
Wow!
like what?
Right.
He goes, so I go, "What got you involved?
We got the right guy here.
What got you involved in comedy, Gilbert?" Well, Chauncey, that's a good question. I started back, I would say, 15 years ago in the Catskills, and I at first I wasn't sure I'd be any good at. This is Gilbert Gottfried. So that's
great. Yeah.
So that's what it was like talking to Gilbert, and the other ones were Jackie Mason, right? Jackie Mason was great. He's in the book. He's dead. Pat Cooper, who was brilliant, he's dead in the book. Richard Belzer, brilliant, dead. Of course, Richard Pryor, Robert Schimmel, Sam Kinison. Great interview with Sam Kinison, who I actually got to interview after we had a fist fight. So you remember Sam Kinison's the one that got me on to Stern.
Yes.
Years later, he and I sat down for a great interview. So, and of course, Artie Lang's in the book, and I'm not sure if he's dead. So
I think he's still there hasn't been an Artie Lang sighting in a while.
No, so we don't really know for sure. But Artie's in the book too. So
that's great.
There's just so many great funny people. Pauly Shore, so many great ones.
Hey, Chauncey,
I love it.
I'm sorry. I just had a question. I'm really interested in, how was it interviewing Roseanne Barr?
Oh, she was great. She was absolutely great. She's no holds barred, no pun intended, no holds barred. She's really very funny, and what I like about her is that she doesn't give a shit. She doesn't give a shit, and she just lets it go. She's very political now. She was very political then, actually, and I felt like I was talking to my next door neighbor having a beer. She's just that kind of person, not a pretentious bone in her body. I really, really enjoyed her. She was awesome. And Tom Arnold is in the book. Now, Tom Arnold's interview is interesting because I interviewed him when he had the show with Roseanne. I don't know if you remember, they used to be on TV together.
Yes, on Roseanne.
and they made a deal with the cast, and Sandra Bernhard, who's in the book, was also on the show, if you remember.
Yes, she was. Yep.
And what Tom Arnold told me at the time was that nobody from the show was allowed to do the Howard Stern show, or they'd be fired from the set. So this blew up on Stern. So Roseanne and Tom didn't do Stern for 20 years because of that. Because of the interview that Stern read on the air that Tom had did with me, that the cast was banned from doing his show. So that was kind of controversial. So they all have a story to tell. Probably the most shocking story to me is the one with Jim Brewer. You know, Goat Boy from Saturday Night
Yep.
Live.
Yep.
So I did he's in the book, and we spoke, and at the time, Rolling Stone magazine had just come out with the cover with half the cast of Saturday Night Live on it. Half the cast wasn't on the cover. So, and Jim wasn't. So I said to him, I go, how does it feel not to have made the cover? Half your cast is on the cover. That has to cause friction, you would think, with the cast.
Yeah.
Half are on the cover and half aren't. Who made that decision? And now this was a defining moment in Jim's career, because he could have said what he should have said, and what he could have said is, well, Chaunce, at the end of the day, we're a team. It's great that we got the promotion, SNL, we're an ensemble cast, and they couldn't fit us all on the cover, but we got great press from it, and I'm happy for the ones who did get the cover. That would have been the correct answer. What he did say is, we blame Lorne Michaels. He fucked us. He fucked half the cast. Half the cast isn't talking to the other half, and it's other bullshit, and it's really tough to be on the set right now because no one's talking to anybody, and it's all because of Lorne Michaels and his stupid decision to put half the cast. We all deserve to be on that cover. Well, that made headlines in Page 6, and then Lorne asked me for a copy of the issue. We sent it to him, and the next day, Jim got fired.
Wow.
And he called me up and he said, Chaunce, you fucked me. Why did you fuck me? And I said to him, I said, Jim, I don't think I fucked you. I said, I'm not your publicist. I asked you a question. You gave me an answer in an interview for a magazine. Was I supposed to stop and correct you and say, nope, wrong answer? What you're supposed to say is, no, we're happy we all got mentioned,
Right.
It doesn't work like that.
Right.
You don't pay me to do your PR.
Right.
Exactly.
The magazine pays me. You don't pay me. You fucked yourself.
Tell me that off the record, not on the record.
Yeah. Or say, Chaunce, can I say this off the record?
Right.
I would say absolutely. Off the record was always off the record. And I turned off the recorder and he could have said anything. And then he said, but on the record, I'd like to say this for the interview. But that's not what he did. He said, nope. He goes, I'm going to tell you exactly how I feel. And that's exactly what I wrote. And he got fired. And
He buried himself.
We made up since then, but I think he knows he was wrong. There's nothing, I could have done.
Yeah.
I wasn't there to make sure that he didn't get in trouble. I was there to write an honest answer to an honest question.
And you did that. Now I want to ask you something about baseball. If you were doing Stepping Out again and you had a chance to interview any major league player today, who would that be? Do you have anyone that you're like, oh, I got
someone playing today?
Yeah.
Playing today. Oh, it'd have to be Judge, right? I think it would have to be Judge. I think, but a lot of quite honestly, a lot of these guys are boring interviews. They're so programmed to answer questions.
I think
without getting in trouble. These guys are great at not getting in trouble during interviews. Like Dennis Rodman was great to interview because Dennis Rodman didn't give a shit. He come to the interview wearing a dress. He didn't care. But a lot of the big stars over the years that I interviewed, they always had very guarded questions. You can almost answer the answer for them. So while it was fun for me to meet them, I never felt like I was walking away with the greatest interview I've ever done. Phil Rizzuto was great. I interviewed Phil Rizzuto, and that I really enjoyed. Yeah. He was awesome. It's hard to say. I would guess Aaron Judge would be someone who I'd like to sit down with and talk to. But there's probably a lot more.
Judge would probably give you the same kind of, typical answers that Jeter would have given you, because I think you did Jeter too, right?
Well, the Jeter story is a great story. So it was Jeter's sophomore year in baseball, and pretty much at that point, I think he won Rookie of the Year, and we all knew he was going to be a big star. So I wanted him for the cover of Stepping Out. So how am I going to get? It's hard to get athletes because it's not the typical Hollywood, PR firm that represents them. Usually you have to go through the ball club, through Major League Baseball, or through their agent, right? That's how you have to get these guys. So I found out who his agent was, and and I called and said these words. I go, "This is Chaunce Hayden from Stepping Out Magazine, and I'm very, very happy and proud to tell you that Derek Jeter, your client, has won Man of the Year for Stepping Out. Yep, he's won it. He's won it. It's unbelievable that he's won it. I was hoping he'd win it, and yes, we've had millions of votes have come in, and he has been selected. And the agent, wow, are you kidding? I'm like, no, I know, I'm dead serious. And he goes, so what happens now? I go, well, he sits down and does an interview with us. And of course, we'll have a plaque for him that we present before a game. And he's like, oh, okay, when can we do the interview? And so we Stepping Out. I mean, it's Stepping Out Magazine. So the agent, he booked the interview, and I got to talk to him. I said, I think Derek knew right away that this was total bullshit, but the agent didn't. The agent was so happy to go back and tell Derek,
"Oh, you got Man of the Year.
Look what I did. You're Man of the Year. Who's the greatest agent?"
Did you?
So I got a great interview with Derek Jeter.
Did you give him a plaque or no?
No. We never. I was lucky to get out of it. I was so afraid that they were going to have a copy of Stepping Out when I got there and saying, "You son of a bitch." I was afraid. That was terrifying. Getting busted.
I'll tell you though, that is that's another funny story. You have the best stories.
Yeah, you had to be clever, but you got to realize too, in the early days, there was no internet, there was no Google, there was no research that you could possibly do. So I could say anything. I could say Stepping Out is a global magazine. It's very big in Paris. It's very big in Dubai. And of course, now we're here in America. We have over 2 million readers, and we'd like to put your client on the cover. There is no way that they could check. They'd be like, yes, this is amazing. And so that's how I got so many big stars to talk to me. It got a little more. What?
Yeah, it is amazing, Chauncey. One of our listeners, TBK, said this dude could sell Snickers to diabetics. He's calling you brilliant.
You have to have confidence, and you have to believe it, so they believe it. And there was no way to check it. Now, in the later years, they could Google Stepping Out, and they could Google my name and say the guy from Howard Stern. It got a little more challenging. But for the first, I'd say 15 years, oh my God, the interviews I would get, and it was so much fun because I could get anybody, I just got anybody I wanted.
Listen, Stepping Out Magazine was a staple. Sorry, Chris, go ahead. I cut you off. Sorry.
I was going to say, give us the story how you went from Stepping Out to Howard Stern. Like, where was the connection?
Well, Sam Kinison. I was saying earlier, when Sam Kinison attacked me backstage, Howard had me come on the air and tell my story about Sam attacking me, and Howard never heard of me before. So he had a million questions about who's this guy with a funny name, Chaunce Hayden, and what's this magazine called Stepping Out? It sounds like a gay magazine. It sounded like he had so much fun with my name and the fact that it's this one guy that does the interviews. He sells the ads. He cleans, vacuums the floors. He washes the windows. He just said, he goes, "What do you have, a broom up your ass while you're sitting there typing your interviews?" It was comedy gold for Stern. And then, but to your point, what kept me on the show, why I stayed on the show after that, was because I realized that if I start mentioning Howard Stern in some of these interviews and just throw in there just one throwaway question, hey, so what do you think of Howard Stern? That I'm going to get an honest answer because I'm not associated with the show, and I would get all kinds of answers from some of the most famous people in the world would tell me how they really feel about Stern, and he loved it. He loved it, and it would give him a whole morning of material. Talk and start feuds with people, so many feuds because of the interview they did with me. And that was part of why when he came out with the book Private Parts, he called me up and asked me if I would help him write it. So if you have Private Parts, the book,
Yep.
When you open it up and you look inside and you see all the boxes with quotes from celebrities about what they think of Stern, those are all my quotes that came from my interviews.
Wow.
And he thanks me in front of the book for providing those, because it was a big part of his show during those years were the celebrity quotes about how they really feel about Stern. It started so many feuds.
You were gold on Stern. I'll tell you, you were funny, you were gold, and always look forward to hearing when he had Chauncey on. And when you would just call into, that was great also, some of your calls. So
when Alec Baldwin told me to fuck off, I
you told a lot of people that, I think, lately.
I think that my greatest moment on Stern was when I brought in the family of Beetlejuice.
Oh my God.
Nobody realized that he had a sister exactly like him.
Oh God.
Nobody knew that. Nobody knew the same disease, the same thing, and just like him, like a twin.
Oh my God.
And I uncovered this. So I went out and I found them, and I convinced, they didn't want to do it, but I convinced the mother of Beetlejuice and the sister of Beetlejuice to come on the show. And it was a surprise for Stern. He didn't even know. And it was, his eyes lit up when you see Erica, this little mini Beetlejuice girl, come walking in. And to have Beetlejuice and his sister on the couch together, the two of them. I think it's on YouTube. I think you can see it. It maybe one of the greatest moments in Stern history was Beetlejuice and his sister on the couch with Stern.
Yeah, people definitely have to check that out.
Yeah, that was a great moment.
You're just gold. You were gold on that show, like I said. Now I know you're still in touch with Grillo. You wrote the foreword to his book. Is there anyone else on the show you're still in touch with?
Trying to think, who would I talk to on the show? No, I don't think so. I think everybody kind of went their own ways. Jim Florentine was always very good to me. I had, if you remember, I had a terrible falling out with that show. Like,
yes,
in The Sopranos, you get killed off the show. Stern, you get killed off the show. You just don't leave the show. As if you read the book from Grillo, he kind of explains it. So when I left, it was so ugly and so nasty and vicious that, you couldn't be a friend. If you were a friend of mine, you couldn't be a friend of mine anymore if you were a part of the Stern Show. No, to this day, my name is banned from being mentioned. So we all went our separate ways, but I love it. I love the fact that I was killed off the show. To me, I'd rather, what's the phrase, burn out than fade away?
Yes.
I would rather, if you're on The Sopranos, I'd rather be Big Pussy than just a character that kind of is not on the show anymore. Like, just kind of fades out. I got shot in the head and tossed over the side of the boat, and I love that. I love it.
Chris,
yes, I'm sorry.
Before he goes, do you want to, so we already asked him that other commissioner question, right? So you have something else you want to ask him?
Yes. Oh, actually, real quick, I just got this. I brought this up. Hold on. This way. This is true. You did. Beetlejuice.
Here we are.
So he was looking for that.
Yeah. I didn't.
How awesome is that picture?
That's great. Chris, good job. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
That's all right. No. I was just looking for it. I figured it'd be funny to show everybody.
And not to bring you guys down, but she has since passed away. Poor her.
Yeah, that's sorry to hear that.
Yeah,
but that was a great show. I laughed. She was so loving, and I was so loving to her. She didn't want to. She got to the show and backed out. She didn't want to come into the studio, so I had to go out there and get on my hands and knees and kind of just say it's going to be okay. They wouldn't do it unless I sat next to her. So I had to sit there with her because she was so nervous. She said, "I'll only do it if you sit next to us and you make me feel comfortable." So I sat there with her just so she could manage to get through it.
Okay.
That's great.
It would have been a great reality show. The mother said no to it. The Stern offered to finance a reality show, but the mother wouldn't do it.
Would have been great.
They were just such good people. They didn't want to exploit the family like that. But oh God, Erica was great.
Well, yeah, we always ask the question: if you were baseball commissioner, what changes would you make? And I think we asked you that already, we could skip that. But this is probably a little more different question. With Pete Rose being reinstated back into baseball, now do you think he should be in the Hall of Fame now?
He should be in the Hall of Fame, but his family should refuse it. Don't do it. I hope that his family protests and says, you know what? Take the Hall of Fame and stick it up your ass. We don't want to be in the Hall of Fame. We don't want the name Rose in the Hall of Fame. They should have done it before he died, and to put him in now, I think is so cruel. It's awful. No, don't go into the Hall of Fame, Pete. You don't need the Hall of Fame. We all know that you belong there. They didn't have the guts to put you in when you were alive, when you were sick. They wouldn't do it. And now they're going to do it? No way. Stay out of the Hall of Fame. Fuck the Hall of Fame. That's what I say about the Hall of Fame and Pete Rose.
Cool. All right, listen. Buy Chauncey's book, 50 of the Funniest People of All Time, 3 decades of legendary interviews. You heard him. You heard some of the stories. Get that book because I'm getting the book. I can't wait to read it.
And can I tell you something? Yeah. There's 3 versions of the book. So if you go on Amazon, there's the Kindle version, which is only $5, and it downloads onto your computer or phone or Kindle. But then there's a soft cover and hardcover. Now, the hardcover is expensive, but it's a coffee table book, and it's absolutely a piece of art. So if you go for the hardcover, I think it's only a $10 difference between the soft cover and the hardcover. I would do it because this is something that really is loaded with great photos of these people, and the interviews are just priceless. And you could totally put this on your coffee table, and it's a great conversation piece when you have friends over. I'm very proud of it myself. I think it's a piece of art. So if you just want to read the interviews, go ahead and get the $5 version. But man, I'll tell you that can I show it? Can I actually show it to you guys?
Yeah. Show it. We just got to bring Chris. Take that thing down.
Let me see if I can. Can you see it? Oh, you can't see it probably because of the
background.
The background thing's messing it up. Can you see it now?
Oh, okay. That's
there you go. That's a little better.
There you go.
Now,
looks great.
Yeah, that's so. Anyway.
No, it looks great. Man. Hey, congratulations on the book too.
The Mets fucked me again. The Mets did it again. I hate the Mets. Oh my God, they won't even let me promote my book.
That's it.
Chauncey, we love having you on the show. We can't wait for the next book, the music book, to come out.
The music book, hopefully for Christmas.
We're gonna love that. But
on the show and talk. Music, man.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. All right, Chris. Chauncey was great as usual. We're gonna be back on next Friday at 3 p.m. Back with baseball. This Friday. Talk about the Mets and Yankees. What went on this week, and hopefully the Mets start hitting.
Definitely. Hopefully it'd be better by then, Rob. Hopefully for you guys.
Thanks. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chauncey, and we'll catch everybody on Friday.
Take care, everybody.